reason, the last video, I tried to cut out the front of it because the time stopped from me turning it on and then coming to sit down, and I couldn't cut that out. Sorry.
Y'all got to see it all. Me in the hole. I wasn't there.
Me in the hole. Okay, so our last video that we did, this is part 2. Part 1 was on the books that we had not read yet that we are looking forward to reading. Now, this one is books that we have already read, and we're going to have a little bit more talk about them just because we've read them. The last one's like we don't know what to tell you because we haven't read them yet.
We're excited.
And then this one is more, we've already read them, so we can give some highlights on what we like most about each book and stuff. So I can speak for mine. Some of these I read so long ago, so I might not have a ton to say on them other than just small things. But anyway, so we're also going to do it differently this time because I've got 6 books and she's got 5. And so we're going to... Oh, that's right, 4 plus a picture. So we are going to go back and forth instead of me doing them all and then her doing them, or vice versa. We're going to do, I'm going to do one, she's going to do one, I'm going to do one, she's going to do one. So that way nobody's talking the most. Okay, so I'm going to start because I had more books. So this book is actually a series. It's called The New Answers Book. It says 1 because it's book 1 of 4. There's 4 of these books. Jennifer Schreiber and I had long chats about these books.
Okay.
These are excellent for kids, but really they're excellent for us. So based on the fact that you can see there is a dinosaur fossil on the front, I think you could gather that this is about evolution and about creation. Like, that's why it's called the Answers Book. Each chapter is a question about creationism or evolution. So this is a great place to go. We have sort of talked about this in the class over the past few years, but we never had an actual topic on it.
Jen Wilkin has a fantastic chart graph about evolution, creationism, where we fall, why we fall there.
Okay.
I just did her study, The God of Creation, which is Genesis 1 through 11.
I want to see that chart.
And it's a pretty awesome chart.
So what we're going to see too is that with evolution, it's not quite as simple as I believe in evolution, I believe in creation.
Hers is this long
Yeah,
line.
it's not quite that simple because like there's 2 big types of evolution, microevolution and macroevolution. So it looks bad for a Christian to say, oh, I don't believe in evolution at all whatsoever, whereas science shows us things such as microevolution. In other words, there is a wolf, and from the wolf we got all the dogs that we have. It came from one, that's called microevolution, different kinds or different species within a kind. So all the dogs came from a wolf. Macroevolution is what we do not believe in. Macroevolution is human beings came from tadpoles. We are talking about 2 different things here, and that is impossible to prove. That's why it's still called the theory of evolution, because it cannot be replicated in a test tube. And that's macro. That can't happen. We can't go from tadpoles or bacteria to this.
By the way, she's not the doctor in this conversation. Keep going with your science.
I didn't even think about that. I forget your doctor sometimes until Garrett's sick, and then I gotta call you. Anyway,
Garrett does not forget.
And Garrett does not forget. So anyways, this book is great. There's 4 different books, but these are the questions that maybe you haven't even thought to ask.
Sure.
So, and another reason I love this book is because the chapters are short. I mentioned short chapters last time. You get them again. And what I did with this book is because each one's a different question, they don't flow.
Okay.
So you don't have to read chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. I looked at the table of contents and you see all these check marks, right? The reason I did that is because I read it out of order.
Okay.
And so I did different check marks at different times.
Which actually really surprises me about you.
I know, right?
Okay.
Because there were certain things I was more interested in than others. So the kinds of questions you're going to see in here.
I like that one.
I was about to read that one. You pointed to the one I was about to read. Was there really a Noah's Ark and a flood? Here's a good one because I bet many people have not thought about this. How did the animals spread all over the world from where the ark landed? If the ark landed in Turkey, modern day Turkey, which is what I think most archaeologists, how did they get to America?
I like it. Okay.
And then it gets really weird. Are UFOs real? I don't know.
There's a lot.
There's some very interesting questions in here. I texted Jordan at one point because one of them is, can catastrophic plate tectonics explain flood geology? That is a lot of big words.
I like how did defense and attack structures come about? Brady Allen would be real excited about that.
Right?
Yeah, okay.
I think Grand Canyon and different walls and anyways, did dinosaurs turn into birds? why don't we find human and dinosaur fossils together? If we think, because creationists are not saying dinosaurs don't exist. Like, clearly dinosaurs exist. But what we're saying is that they walked on the earth at the same time as human beings. So that question is, if that's the case, well, why don't we find those fossils together? And they approach that in there. So this is really good. The guy that's behind this is Ken Ham. If you guys have heard of we've talked about it a lot too. We talked about going there, but the Ark and the Ark Encounter that's in Kentucky.
I have tickets to go there.
Brady,
that's where we were supposed to go for spring break when Brady threw up all over the car. So we will be going in 2019.
I told Carter we'd go this summer. So Ken Ham is the one that's behind the Ark Encounter, and next to it is the Creation Museum. So you can knock both of those bad boys out, but read these because this again is book 1, and then there's book 2, 3, and 4 also. So these are just really good in answering questions. Again, questions you probably didn't even think to ask. I would never have thought until I read this. I never even thought about that. How did a dinosaur get to Montana if the Ark landed? Oh, and another question I think it approaches in here is, and it's on the Ark question, is how did all the species fit in an Ark? Like, that's one of the things that evolutionists don't like the Ark theology, because they say there is no way, based on the dimensions that are given for the Ark, that you could fit everything on there. But they're not thinking about microevolution. I don't need one of every single dog on the boat. All I need is 2 wolves. And then over time, they create all the dogs. I don't need every single type of dinosaur. I only need certain ones that will eventually create the other ones.
They need each other, right?
I'm sure they're... Well, okay, so another thing is, you're thinking that you have to get an enormous T-Rex into an Ark. Get a baby.
Okay.
I mean, they're bigger than that, I think. But get a baby. I mean, you gotta get infants.
I need someone to comment below on the actual size of a baby T-Rex. Just so we know.
You just take the egg, right? Like,
sure. Right? I don't know that there was specification that they had to have not been hatched.
We're not trying to get into all that. My point being, there's some really good questions in here that you probably didn't even think to ask. So this is a good book. So
is that at Lifeway?
Yes, I got all 4 of them at Lifeway, but you can also get it on Amazon, or ChristianBook.com usually has a deal for all 4 of them being bought together.
Now, here's my disclaimer on that. Remember discernment in what you buy and where you buy. And just because it has the name Christian on it doesn't mean everything there is a good choice. So, I laughed as we were starting this and said, this is my fluffiest book of all of mine. Fluffy. And it's not fluffy because it's Jen Wilkin. And
it matches her shirt.
Maybe because I went to her conference.
Because it was the conference.
I just got to go to a conference. Jen came to Shades Mountain Baptist and did our women's conference, and it was amazing. And yes, you see my shirt says Rooted, and this says None Like Him. When Jen started her conference, she stood up and she said, I need y'all to understand something. I'm a Bible teacher. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do anything else. I'm not here to make you feel good. I'm not here to inspire you. I don't want you to leave here and go, hey, she is really awesome. If you don't like me, that's great, because it means I taught you something.
Yep.
She taught us a cool way to remember the 10 Commandments with our fingers. Mm-hmm. She gave us a 20-question quiz that most of us bombed.
You sent me that. I haven't taken it yet.
To point out how much we
you
don't know. So, Jen Wilkin by no means is fluff. So this is one of 2 books. This one is called None Like Him. The sequel to this is called In His Image.
It's over there. It's orange. And it looks just like that.
None Like Him is about the 10 ways God is different from us. And I will totally just read the back of it. Our limitations are by design. We were never meant to be God. But at the root of every sin is our rebellious desire to possess attributes that belong to God alone. Calling us to embrace our limits as a means of glorifying God's limitless power, Jen Wilkins invites us to celebrate the freedom that comes when we rest in letting God be God. So, it truly, chapter by chapter, goes through and says God is self-existent. God is eternal. God is omnipresent. God is sovereign. And at the end of every chapter, I also love, it's truly a study.
Yeah, you have the question. I didn't answer the question.
There are questions at the end of every chapter.
She answered the question.
I answer them, and then it actually has a prayer challenge for you about what to pray for. So, really cool. None Like Him. And then the follow-up In His Image is actually what characteristics of God should we try to adopt and carry out. So, that's my first one. I don't have as much to say about it, but it's
well,
cool.
And this one too is theological way of saying this. None like him. She's talking about the attributes of God. They're referred to as incommunicable attributes. So they're attributes of God that only God has. He did not communicate those to us.
Nor do we supposed to adopt them.
Nor should we try to get them. So like the ones that she read, God is eternal. I am not eternal.
God is omnipresent.
God is omnipresent. I am not. I can't be in two places at once.
A chapter that really got me was God is incomprehensible,
Can't
because I
understand
feel like
That's the one we probably try to take
so
the most.
hard is that I'm going to understand everything that God does, and I'm going to put it in a box. And I actually wrote, this is one place I struggle because I want to put God in a box and understand Him.
We try to.
And
It's my election issue.
Yes, and there are just times that we go. The thing I love at the end of it, most chapters, she goes, "How does this free you?
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that you're not eternal, how is that freeing to you?
Mm-hmm.
And then how are you in your daily life trying to be
Live
those
this out.
things?"
Mm-hmm.
So, Jen Wilkin,
So those
none
are
like
the-
him. It's not long.
It's not.
And
And she tells good stories.
she's actually really
There's
funny.
one thing, either in this one or in the other one, where did you read the other one?
Oh yeah.
Where she talks about like when her kids would come to her and say, I fell and broke my leg, and she's like, drink some water.
Yes.
That's me. I do it all the time. My kids are like, I have a headache. Go drink some water.
No, you don't. You know, I'm calling
Abby.
And then they cry and get upset because Abby's called.
So this one is incommunicable attributes, and then in His image is communicable attributes, the attributes that God has, but that He also gave to us, loving, and I'm trying to think of some of the other
I
ones.
don't remember all of them.
Being loving,
I did read it, but it was like a year ago. I'm actually teaching a Bible study right now on
That's
this,
right.
so
With your
this is why I
residents.
know it.
Yeah.
You're up.
Okay. This one's a little older. But it's a classic.
It's
so
a
my
lot
ink.
older.
It's a
not
lot older.
little older.
A little older is like 90s, but we're going to go back to like the 1600s. This is by a guy named John Bunyan. It's called The Pilgrim's Progress. My English teacher's in the room. I know Laura Lee Holland's like, I know that book. I mean, because all of the teachers in the English arena loved this book. It used to be, back in the day, it was on even public schools reading lists, and
No more.
not anymore. I remember reading this for school, like over the summer, and I just picked it up because now that my theological knowledge has grown so much, I went back and read it, and I was like, holy cow, there's so much good stuff in here. So this is, I don't typically read fiction books. I just don't do that. I don't know why. But this is a fiction book, but it's based on gospel truths. So John Bunyan is one of our Puritans. He was in prison when he wrote this book. The whole book is about a man named Christian, and his name is purposeful. The names of everybody in this book is purposeful, but it's dialogue, so I can't show it to you. Like Abby can see it. So it's like Faithful says this.
Oh, that's
Talkative
pretty
says
cool.
this. It's a dialogue between
like the
characters.
letters,
It's like you're reading a script.
What is the C.S. Lewis letters?
Screw Tape letters. Yes.
Similar.
I should have done that one.
Keep going.
Okay, sorry. Anyway, so this one it's about a man named Christian who at the beginning leaves his family and goes on a journey. So what I want to make sure, if you read this book, that I'm clear on, this is supposed to be metaphorically pointing us to Scripture. In no way are we saying you should leave your family. If you have a family of unbelievers, you should walk away from your family.
The
and
Bible
walk to
actually
God.
doesn't say
The
that.
Bible doesn't say that. But his point here that you see is that when this man Christian becomes a Christian, he walks away from the ways of the world to follow God on the narrow path. So that's the kind of stuff you're going to see him be approached by demons and by unbiblical people, by nominal Christians. There's all kinds of stuff in here that I read and I'm like, yes, yes, yes. It's just so good. And at the same time, because it's a fictional story, you're reading it like, what happens next? What happens next?
You
It's
could
a
read this
quick
on the
read.
beach.
This one you could read on the beach, yes. I hate saying none of them you could read on the beach. But yes, this is definitely one you could read on the beach. But it's a narrative, so it's very easy to flow. But it's such a good story. And I think that for me, when I read it for the first time, I walked away from it and I was like, I have more knowledge of the Bible than I thought I did. So I'm not saying you should have an ego booster, but I think there's a sense of confidence that comes with that. Like,
Or
I
maybe
know
it's-
these gospel truths, even though I struggle with them.
So, I'm reading the Chronicles of Narnia to
Yeah.
my kids.
Yes.
Okay, so we are on book 7 of 7. And
We talked about this Chronicles of Narnia in class. 'Cause I didn't know there was like 7 books.
the
I had no
things
idea.
that I love about it are when my children can go,
They can point it
That's that story in the Bible about
Yeah.
such and such.
Mhm.
And the book 6, they were in the underworld.
out. Oh.
And
Like Hades?
like Hades for sure. And how they got out and how they were redeemed, but the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe obviously being the one that everybody knows, and that's truly the crucifixion. You see the crucifixion. But I love it the same way. But I'll also tell you things like this challenge you because you go, do I know which story that is, and what are they referring to?
Yep. And he gives references throughout it too. So if you struggle to figure out the connection, a lot of times he'll give. I took a lot of notes in this one. So a lot of times he'll give some
Y'all,
references.
she
for
says
stuff.
she took a lot of notes in this. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to do a demonstration here. Y'all see this fictional novel that she read?
Fictional novel.
This is what it looks like. Just so you know.
I like to go back and read.
Anyone
things.
who knows and loves Marcy knows there's nothing light about anything that she does.
And I will say this, as I'm saying this, we're talking about these books. I have become a glorified library to some of the people in this class. I'm going to call out Emily for a second. She keeps checking out books for me.
And when she brings them back.
Well, I have to tell her to bring them back because right now I think she's got 2 of my books. But I'm at least keeping a tally. So that being said, if like money is an issue for you and you want to read these, come to our libraries. I mean, we have all of these books, and you would get my commentary and hers too.
It would be
So
great.
if you struggle with like paying for it or anything like that, please don't let that stop you.
Or the
Just come
library
tell
not
us.
having it. And I will say that's, like this they would
This-
have. The Pilgrim
yeah,
Progress.
it's a
But some of
classic.
these, a public library actually doesn't
May not
have.
carry it.
And so
They'll
then
carry
you,
Joel Osteen. But
then
they
you
will
say,
not carry
right.
this.
And so how